Asttina! Now, sashay away.
Rude. Winning the first episode of Drag Race is a big deal. It automatically makes you the front runner and someone to keep an eye on to the judges and the viewers. So when that queen has an early exit, it makes you wonder what happened, at least for me. After the first episode of UK Season 2, it seemed obvious to fans that Asttina had everything it takes to go all the way to the end. She won the first challenge, showcasing 2 looks that showed her versatility as a queen, and if the other queen's word was anything to go by, no one, except for maybe Tace, would have a chance in defeating her in a lip sync. So how did Asttina go from winning the first challenge to going home by episode 3 and essentially becoming 11th place due to Joe's return? When Asttina enters, she has a cute little line, rude, she tells us about herself, and we get the usual chat. The other queen's asking her what her specialty is, what kind of drag she does. Asttina tells them she's a dancing queen, but she lets us know that she can do everything. For unknown reasons, Sister Sister decides to chime in, asking if there will be drama or a rivalry between the 2 dancing queens. There's never been drama between 2 dancing queens. I have no idea, why she even said this, to be honest. I think she was just trying to get a little moment. Like Bob said, it's not a thing. There's no drama. Sister Sister's dumb comment does have some effect on the narrative, though. The viewers are led to believe that there's going to be some sort of Tace versus Asttina storyline. Maybe they'll end up lip sync against each other, but we get the feeling that one of them is going to come out on top. Later on in the episode, Bimini asks Asttina who she's going to do for her gay icon runway, and she tells her that she's going to do Naomi Campbell. Well, Bimini has heard that Tace is also going to do Naomi Campbell, so they bring over Tace to talk about it. This moment has set up as if there's going to be some sort of tension, but neither queens feed into the storyline. Instead, Tace and Asttina both acknowledge that there's a lack of queer and black representation in the media, especially in the UK. To both of them, it makes sense that they ended up choosing Naomi for their gay icon runway. She's the only person growing up that they looked up to and saw themselves in. So instead of getting conflict, we get a very important conversation about representation and how Asttina and Tace want to provide representation that they never had growing up. Unfortunately, from a producer perspective, this completely takes the wind out of the potential Tace versus Asttina storyline. It's clear there's no bad blood or negative energy between them and that they're just supportive of each other. So before we even get to the first runway, the Asttina versus Tace storyline clearly isn't going to go anywhere. But wait, Ahora's here to stir up some drama. When asked who she's worried about or who she thinks is going to be in the bottom, Ahura says Asttina. She says she's just basing it off entrance looks, which honestly doesn't really make sense because Astina's entrance look was not one of the worst. Ahura thinks that the bottom 2 is going to be Asttina and her previous nemesis, now nemesis to Thorgy Thor, Tia Coffee. I mean, the fact that Ahura is putting Asttina in the bottom next to Tia at this point, who she thinks is shit, says a lot about how Ahura feels about Asttina. This is the second time a potential conflict has revolved around Asttina, so clearly she's someone that the other queens have a reaction to. After the runway, Asttina, Lawrence, and Ellie are proclaimed to be the top 3 of the week. Woo! The judging on this episode to me was difficult because so many queens did well or had one good look and one bad look. I do think these 3 were worthy of being in the top, but so many queens justifiably could have been in that top 3 had the producers wanted. Cherry, Tace, and even Joe, who was in the bottom, all easily could have been in the top, but who do they give it to? Lawrence, Rue's favorite. He's already having such a good time talking to Lawrence and just enjoying Lawrence. Ellie, whose mug Rue is obsessed with, maybe because it kinda looks like Matthew Anderson's mug on Rue, and who is already a clear foil and storyline partner with Lawrence. And Asttina, the queen who is already shown to be underestimated. Then we cut to Untucked. Ahura finds it unforgivable that Asttina walked the runway in an ASOS jacket. Once again, people are talking about Asttina and are bothered by her. Given what's happening on Tuck, who does it make the most sense to give the win to? If we give the win to Lawrence this episode, it might not be a good idea because she's clearly Rue's favorite, and if she receives the win in a week where she wasn't the clear winner and it was kind of up in the air, the fans will immediately cry out favoritism and turn against her, which we don't want because she's a potential winner. Ellie, no, because then she's going to be seen as stronger than Lawrence, and they have this weird Scottish queen rivalry going on. Astina's a perfect choice. Both of her looks were polished, although not being the most detailed, she showed precise characterization in both presentations. And you know if Ahura found out Asttina won wearing an ASOS jacket, when she designed her own looks and she's a designer and a fashion queen and she was just safe, she's gonna have something to say. So Asttina wins the challenge, deservingly so in my opinion, and we move on to what is sure to be a tension-filled episode 2. During the fallout, Bimini asked who the safe queen thought was going to be in the bottom. Ahura says that herself and the other queens, aside from Ginny, who defended Asttina all throughout the first episode, agreed that Asttina would be in the bottom. Why? She wore an ASOS jacket, which in the words of Ahura was disgusting and appalling. Asttina, though, isn't really bothered. She's not really phased and doesn't feed into Ahura's pettiness, telling the other queens to just step their pussy up. This is the second time Asttina has had potential conflict with the queen and not fed into it. To the producers, Asttina doesn't add fuel to the fire, she puts the fire out and moves on. That's a great attitude to have in life, to not let anyone else phase you, but it's not a great attitude for reality TV producers. On the other hand, we have Ahura, who is ready to give drama for TV at any point through her unfiltered stream of consciousness. Any hope for Asttina being the underdog who the other girls underestimate is once again squashed the next day when the other queens remark that Tia should have been in the bottom because her looks were underwhelming. Instead of defending herself, Tia says that she got her 3 worst looks out of the way. On the other hand, we have Asttina, who just brushed off the other queen's criticism and continued to relish in her win. In the mini challenge, Tia is elected the Baroness Basic, the most basic queen of the season. This puts the final nail in the coffin of what could have been an underdog storyline for Asttina. Throughout all of episode 2, after the beginning, we barely hear from Asttina. She gives a safe performance and has a pretty safe runway in an overall underwhelming category. But we do see Tia make it into the top 3, but not win due to her look, further establishing her storyline and making her an important character. Tia is causing reactions in the other queens, has some of the best confessionals of the season, and clearly can deliver a show-stopping performance based on her role as Specimen 1. What does Tia have to do with this video and Asttina? We'll see in episode 3. The rules of this challenge are simple. The queens are paired together and must design a look of the same color. Whoever does better is automatically declared safe or potentially wins the challenge if they're the best of the entire night. Whoever wears the look worst, though, is subject to judges' critiques and at risk of being in the bottom 2. RuPaul encourages Ginny to try a new look and maybe do something a bit more sexy and out of her comfort zone. Why? We don't know, but keep this in mind as we go further and get into the judging. Asttina presents the concept for her look to RuPaul, and RuPaul responds with no criticism but is clearly not feeling the concept. She pretty much just says, yeah, yep, Asttina isn't offered any critique from RuPaul to apply to her design, and unsure of what to do, she just goes with her original plan. When we get to the runway, Asttina, Tia, Ginny, Ellie, and Taste are all defeated by their counterparts and left at risk of being in the bottom. Ellie and Taste, though, arguably could have won in their pairs, and they looked better than some of the winning queens like Veronica and Sister Sister. So it would be an injustice to see them in the bottom. Not to mention that they have storylines going on with Lawrence and Ahura respectively. So I don't think there was a moment in the producer's mind that they considered putting Taste or Ellie in the bottom 2. That leaves us with Tia, Asttina, and Ginny. Ginny being in the bottom would certainly be deserved based on looks alone, but that's looking at the show as strictly a competition when the real competition is who is the best reality TV star. Ginny followed Ru's advice and went out of her comfort zone and had one of the most touching conversations of the franchise with Bimini earlier in the workroom. After her storyline this episode, seeing Ginny in the bottom 2 would feel unjust and kind of sad. It would be like a Max or Milk situation when they finally listened to the judges' critiques and were sent home, except Ginny applied the critiques in the same episode. So that leaves us with Tia and Asttina in the bottom 2 to lip sync for their spot in the competition. I wouldn't be surprised if the producers were planning to use the double Shantae this episode because they would expect Asttina to turn out the lip sync and devour Tia. But when Tia gives just as good, if not a better performance than Asttina, there's little to no reason to keep Asttina as well. Tia has tension with Ahura, is underestimated by the other queens, gives great confessionals, and just beat Asttina in a lip sync who's been touted as a lip sync assassin throughout the season. Asttina did just as well, but she was expected to do way better than she did. It doesn't really make sense to use the double Shantae this early on a queen who has fended off 2 potential storylines. In the producer's eyes, what would be left for Asttina to do in this season? She was said to have basic looks, but already proved that wrong by winning a looks challenge. She was supposed to be the best lip syncer on the cast, but wasn't able to match Tia's energy, although her dancing was great. And now she flopped a look challenge, giving credence to the past critiques from Ahura and the others. Asttina leaves the competition with a win, but no win is more important than a compelling storyline. There's a few other queens with a similar trajectory to Asttina that I want to touch on, but before that, please send Asttina some love. She's an amazing queen and has been going through a tough time lately, and should she ever choose to return to Drag Race, it's important for her to know that the fans see what she has to offer, and that her elimination was just a product of the machine that is reality TV and it doesn't speak to her quality of drag. Okay, let's start with Morgan and Mayhem. Yes, we are doing them together. Both enter the competition as huge names in the LA drag scene, win the first challenge, and are sent home on episode 5 during their second lip sync. Also, they're best friends, and then Morgan sends Mayhem home in All Stars. It's really weird. Mayhem's entire storyline was about finally getting on the show after so many years of auditioning. When Mayhem finally wins the first episode, it's like her dream has finally come true. She's on Drag Race, she won the challenge, there's not much left to do with her storyline. On season 10, there were so many big personalities, and Mayhem kind of retreated to herself, it seemed. The fact that she was in the bottom for Bossy Rossi over the Vixen in Asia who gave offensively bad performances shows that the production had lost interest with her. Not to mention that she mysteriously received a note in her station after episode 4 that read, "Boo-hoo, you're next, bitch." We still don't know who left this note for her. I would assume production, because she brought it up in the season 10 reunion, but they cut it. But that's a mystery for another time. After Morgan's first win, she was pretty unremarkable in the rest of the competition. She blended in episodes 2 and 3 and was an undeniable bottom for episodes 4 and 5. Sahara outperforms her in the lip sync and Morgan sachets away. She was providing some drama, but every queen in season 2 was great at that, so it wasn't an asset unique to her. Oh god, down under. Okay, here we go. I don't think Anita was ever a priority for the producers. She was rightfully safe in the first episode and won the Snatch game by default. Not to say that she didn't do amazing, she did, but there was no other option for the winner of that challenge. Etc. also could have won, but her character was controversial, and this season was already bursting at the seams with controversy. Anita's Snatch Game win was earned, but not given to her by the show. There was no other option. Episode 3, she's hilarious and earns a spot in the top 3, making her the front runner and setting her on a path to the end, it seems. That is until she is sniped out of the competition for seemingly no reason. I would say the only options for the bottom in episode 4 were Anita, Karen, etc. and Kidda. Etc. really didn't do a bad job though, and having her in the bottom would make little sense because there was no technical issues with her outfit. Why they didn't place Kidda in the bottom here is a mystery to me, honestly. They didn't seem to really value her at this point. I'm surprised they didn't give Karen a pass and give us an Anita versus Kidda lip sync for the drama of it all. They could have even had Elektra win the challenge with her outfit and had her 2 bosses in the bottom. Imagine the drama of that. Anita's put in the bottom and she receives the critique that her look's already been seen, they've seen it done to death a million times. That being the motif of book pages, which was seen in season 8's book ball only. Is this a valid critique? No, because they gave them the materials to work with. Like, if they don't want to see the materials, don't give it to them, such as the Brillo pads. Meanwhile, we have Art Simone giving us a Marie Antoinette look, which was polished. There was nothing wrong with it. But we've seen that way more than we've seen book looks. But they just brought Art back, and they want to give her praise, so I understand what happened, but it doesn't mean it makes sense. Honestly, though, Anita easily could have been safe or just low. It seems like she was the only one they were willing to sacrifice at this point, which makes no sense because she was such a bright spot in this season. Well, now let's get to the lip sync. I mean, she didn't win the lip sync, don't get me wrong, but Karen was just as bad. Did Karen win or did she survive? I honestly don't even know how to explain why this happened, but as soon as Anita was in the bottom with Karen, she was out the door because Karen would never be sent home even if she tried. Like, I don't know if it was in her contract or what, or if Trixie Mattel just has that much clout that her mentioning her name carried her to the end. The last 2 I want to mention are the España queens who've won the first challenges on season 1 and season 2. We have Onyx and Ugafeo. I don't know how to say it, I'm sorry. Both artistic queens win the first challenge, showing creative drag and showing us a perspective that hasn't been seen on any Drag Race franchise, to be honest. As the challenges move on though, the judges form a perception of them and put them in the box that they're just look queens or artistic queens and don't have the performance capabilities to make it to the end. So as soon as these 2 queens start to falter, they give them bottom placements, no pushing, and send them home. Did I miss anyone? I didn't include anyone who went home past episode 5 because I think episode 5 is very much so the end of the beginning of the competition, and even that's pushing it. Like, what does the end of the beginning even mean? Also, Cornbread doesn't count because she wasn't eliminated. Her ankle just went cleek. Which queen would you most like to see make it further in the competition or come back for an All-Stars or Versus World or anything? I hope my voice wasn't as much of a jump scare for you as it was for me when I was editing this video.